Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert,
And Ryan,
and today we will be discussing the final episodes of The Bad Batch, episodes 14, 15, and 16.
which it's just kind of made sense to do them all at once because 14 leads into 15, and then 15 is essentially like a part one of two. I think even in Disney Plus, it says that the last episode is part two
Yeah,
of the finale.
yeah, they're all pretty much directly related. Um, so yeah, what are and since we're at the finale, I guess we might just
We can say right now, we can say reaction to these episodes and then reaction to the show as a whole.
okay. So first impression, maybe episode by episode for me. Honestly, War Mantle, loved it. Thought it was really cool. Very much what I was like kind of hoping for from Bad Batch. Get to see Gregor, which is just another, call forward to Rebels. I don't know if Gregor's featured in the Clone Wars at all. He may. I just can't really remember. It's been a long time, but I know that he's one of the three, old clones or one of the other two clones that's hanging out with old Rex.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to see that call forward. And Gregor's got an interesting personality, so he's an interesting character.
He's unique, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Episode 15. Again, I thought this was pretty cool. This is the final, that meeting of them and Crosshair, like really finally seeing what it was about, and a lot of like interesting kind of reveals. Like Crosshair had his chip removed already, and something I think I predicted that.
Which we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think I have an issue with it.
Mm-hmm. And then the finale, the ending, Camino Lost, episode 16, was pretty cool, very epic. Definitely gives you the kind of, it gave me this, cool, dreadful sort of feeling watching Camino get destroyed, and a little bit of like feeling in that, something we've seen since Star Wars, not Star Wars, but since the prequels, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was a pretty decent finale. Not amazing, but still pretty good.
No, yeah, I think it was a solid finale. So yeah, my episode 14, I was like, okay, cool. This is where we're heading for the last episodes. Rex has been kidnapped or captured. That's cool. That's interesting. They're obviously going to go find him. And then episode 15 happens. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm really into this. I watched all three in one sitting, and I think it definitely benefited it because it was almost like watching like a movie finale to the series or to the season. And I think it was some of the strongest episodes of the season, which makes my opinion of the show as a whole higher than it would have been. But I think you're right that like the show as a whole could have been better.
Yeah.
And I definitely have like some like minor like things that I might want to nitpick about. But look, I mean, Star Wars is good. It's good Star Wars.
Yeah. It's okay. Certainly been happy to be able to watch it, but
I would argue that it as a season of television was better than whatever the best season of Rebels is. Like this grabbed my attention more than anything in Rebels ever did.
Yeah, while still being like kid friendly, I think it definitely was. Well, I don't know if I would completely agree with that because there's just so many interesting things in Rebels, but it's the general feel of the show, and this one was a little more gritty.
I feel like Rebels is a little more standalone. I'll give it that. Like it's less of a hey, call out to this other Star Wars thing, where this show is definitely a lot of hey, remember this, this. Which is probably my biggest criticism of the show, that it's not about the Bad Batch, it's about Star Wars as a whole. And they just put the Bad Batch on there as a vehicle to show us all these things.
Yeah.
But, I mean, animation alone, I'd rather look at this than, like, pretty much any other animated Star Wars thing except for like the last season of Clone Wars. Like some of the animation in this was just so stellar, particularly in episode 15 when we get the Star Destroyer the ships coming out to basically level Camino with blasts. I almost wish that I could have had a darker room to see the darkness on the TV a little better, because I could tell in my somewhat bright room when I was watching it that there was a lot more detail than I was seeing, but I could still see that it looked really impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the animation in this show is just stands far beyond any other Star Wars show, and that alone like just makes it a more enjoyable watch.
Yeah, which I mean, it should be the best and most advanced, version of their weird little animation style that they use. Which I mean, hey, since I originally watched the first Clone Wars, like I thought was unwatchable. Like
garbage. I as a kid remember, like, I already wasn't big into Star Wars, but when I saw that animation style, I was like, this is just ugly. Like, this is like, you made Yoda look like I liked Yoda, but looking at like the little blocky Yoda in like early Clone Wars, I'm just like, that's like, there's no character to this. It's like, it's gross. It sucks.
So
straight up.
At this point, it needs to have come a long way, and it has. It's significantly better, and definitely. And I see that it's useful for what Star Wars is as well. Like they're able to portray whatever they want in it, and it's decent. It's good. Like, could it be better? Yeah, sure. But
I mean, I think the character models, if anything, are like the least developed, and I feel like they put all of their attention into Omega particularly has like the most like depth, I'd say, of like facial movements and character. Like, a lot of the other characters rely on a lot of just static, my face is sitting unchanging. But if you look at Omega, a lot of the time, like, she has like little subtle ways of looking around and stuff.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, most of the Bad Batch pretty much wear helmets all the time. So it's literally just.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, especially freaking Tech, who, let's be real, like, did not become a character. Like, Crosshair being in like 5 episodes had more depth to his character, like far more depth to his character than the person who was in it literally every episode.
Yeah. But let's get into that more once let's get through our like real recap, right. And then we can really get into all that.
Episode 14.
Yeah, so the Batch get we get like a chase scene of like a trooper like running from some kind of like force that we're not quite seeing exactly what it is, and that trooper ends up getting captured, but it looks like he like drops some kind of signal. We have Rex. He asks the Batch, hey, like, there's a trooper over here that sent me a distress signal, please go and help him out. And the Batch is like, why are we doing this? Like, let's not, yada yada. But in the end, Omega convinces them, hey, we got to help him,
Omega, and I believe Echo also was on he's on the side of Rex said it, let's do what Rex said.
Yeah, good. Do whatever Rex says. I agree.
And I really liked Wrecker's, just like whoever said an argument last was who he agreed with.
Yeah, and that was hilarious. I was like, God, Wrecker is easily one of the favorite characters of the show. He's so likable, but he's amusing and not like, but he's not, obviously he's not like super smart, but he's not like, oh, I'm big dumb and I do nothing. Like he, he has some character. He says things, he does things. Like he's someone you still like to watch. He's not just a big musclehead.
Yeah. Like, he actually has a well-rounded character. I understand who Wrecker is. He's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they decide to take up the distress signal to come to this planet where, first of all, they leave Omega and Wrecker back on the ship so that they can explore and they can serve as backup, basically. And then they realize that the distress signal is coming from within a mountain. and that they recognize that when they enter the mountain, their comms are going to be blocked. So they go in kind of cold, like they let Omega and Wrecker know that, hey, like our comms are going to be down, but if you hear something, like come back us up. And we get Omega like wanting to, I want to help too.
If you hear explosions, do something. Yeah, so they head inside, they infiltrate the base, and they eventually rescue Gregor, who...
Which all of this like stealthing that they do to get into the base, I'm just like kind of like totally here for it. Like this is just like cool. And I don't know if this is relatable to you, but when they entered this base, like when you just see like the inside of this base, it's the first time that one of the Republic ships or like one of the Republic's bases felt more like an Empire base.
Mm-hmm.
Like the look of it, the feel of the place just felt like this is the Empire. This isn't the Republic. Like just like I think it's like with the color scheming or how it's like laid out. And like the fact that it's revealed that most of the troopers there are not clones. They are proper TK stormtroopers. I like this is where I'm like, okay, this is where the Empire starts. This is like, I know that it's already become the Empire. It's no longer the Republic, but like this is, it's not just a name change. This feels different.
Yeah, definitely. And so they infiltrate, they get into Gregor, and they're learning, and we're learning with them that Gregor is literally one of many clone commandos that have been training their replacements. They're real, just conscripted army of people that are going to replace the clones. And while they're trying to effect escape, they trigger an alarm at some point, or and they start getting pursued. And we see how I think it's funny. There's a point where Gregor is like, or one of the batch says to Gregor, he's like, "Oh, you didn't like? They're gonna know to do this, right? Because we would know that." And he's like, "Well, I didn't teach them everything." And it's like this little nod to the fact that's like these troopers aren't as good as clone troopers.
No, they're not.
Yeah, and
that follows along.
Yeah. So we have them running, trying to escape, and eventually Omega and Wrecker bring the ship to try and help them. Everybody's hopping in. They have to like swing around. There's ships running after their ship, chasing them through the air. And eventually Hunter tries to leap into the ship, but basically misses, falls. Look, this guy like falls like hundreds of feet, hits branches on the way down. Like he's a beast actually, because he, like gets to the bottom and then just gets up. Doesn't have any broken limbs, plot armor. So...
And armor.
Yeah, and armor. But speaking of armor, man, how many times in the series has one of our main characters gotten shot straight in center mass? And then they're just totally alive still. But every storm, I guess they must have made that clone trooper armor a lot better, but later stormtrooper armor is made of paper.
Yeah, it's not actually there. It's just an illusion.
Yeah.
Like it's all just Palpatine's like somewhere just like concentrating a little bit to make it seem like they're wearing armor, but they're not.
Yeah. So Hunter falls, doesn't make it into the ship, and is gonna he tells the rest of the batch like, go, I'll catch up. You come back for me later. And Omega doesn't want to leave, but Tech says he's like, if we take any more hits, we'll be down, so we have to go.
So they jump out.
And Hunter is surrounded by the forces on the planet, and he's captured.
Yes. Leading into episode 15. Do you want to just run through all the episodes and then we'll do because it's all one story.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, Hunter is captured. He is taken to Poca City on Camino, where he basically meets up with Crosshair, and him and Crosshair, Crosshair is like, hey, they'll come for you if we activate this tracker. So he activates the tracker, and the Bad Batch, of course, get it. They know it's a trap. Crosshair knows they know it'll be a trap, but they'll still come anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on their way. Now we get to see just this amazing back and forth between Hunter and Crosshair. Like what I was waiting for a long time. Though I was hoping for it to be more of like a battle kind of conflict, but getting to see this interpersonal communication about, how he's like, hey, you don't have to do this, Crosshair. And he's like, I do have to do this. I swore to do this. In fact, you should join me in doing it. He's like, this is just the inhibitor chip. And we find out it's not the inhibitor chip. Crosshair said, I had it removed a long time ago. And so he's just been deciding to do these things.
Yes. And we also, what I actually found more interesting was how quickly it like really showed that Crosshair was quite upset at them not feeling the same way that he did. Like he seems definitely quite troubled by the fact that these are his brothers, but they just fundamentally did not see this situation in the way he did, and I don't think he understands why, but he feels betrayed.
Not only that, but like he legitimately says, he's like, you didn't come back for me. Like they when he says, he's like, oh, they'll come for them. They always do. Or at least they usually do. Like he straight is like, giving them zings and stuff, saying like, you didn't come back for me, like, and Hunter's like, well, you tried to kill us. He's like, still, like, you should have came back. Why didn't you come back for me? Why didn't you, like, who cares if I was trying to kill you? Did you think I had a choice? He straight up says, you think I had a choice? Why didn't you do something about it? Like, you're the Bad Batch. You literally go on all these missions and infiltrate this and that and stuff, and you didn't come back here to get me.
You know what? This is 100% fair. The second they learn inhibitor chips were a thing, look, I get not wanting to infiltrate Kamino, trying to find him. I get it. But then they just do exactly that for Rex.
Yeah, exactly.
And they would have done it for pretty much any other member of the Bad Batch.
Exactly. In fact, they're literally doing it right now for Hunter.
And the excuse was that like Crosshair wants to kill them, but again, they're running under the assumption that he's an inhibitor chip and it's not his choice.
Exactly. Like and to say like, and now there is the point of like, they didn't want to take Omega back. Like Hunter says, I won't make you go back to Kamino. Okay. Well, how about the many times when you left her with Sid to go on a mission? So like at this point, it's like, well, come on, man, like go back and get Crosshair. Why isn't the next mission as soon as you knew about inhibitor chips and you had somewhere to put Omega? I think it's time to go for Crosshair. We need to go back and get our guy. Like,
to be fair, I think the immediate next thing that happened was Crosshair showing up and finding them. But like because the inhibitor chip thing happened, they caused the distress beacon with the scavengers. Crosshair shows up. Cad Bane kidnaps. Yeah. And all that happens.
Right.
But then right after that, they're just like, oh, cool, Sid, let's just do whatever.
Yeah, no. I mean, they're like, oh, we're paying off a debt and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you still, even while you're paying off the debt, decide to not do debt paying off jobs. So
they on a whim infiltrated a Empire base to rescue a person they never met before because Rex asked them to.
Yeah.
But Crosshair.
Yeah, but Crosshair.
So Crosshair is fully valid in his opinion.
Yeah, I agree. But they're having this back and forth while the Batch are coming to Kamino and infiltrating, and Omega leads them to a secret water platform that they can land the ship on, and then takes them through an underwater tunnel system that takes them to Nala Se's secret laboratory where the Bad Batch were developed. And, we kind of get this revelation that, like, the Bad Batch are not, like, it's always said that, like, they were mistakes, but, like, it said here, like, no, they were, like, enhanced. Like, you're enhanced clone troopers, not mistake clone troopers.
Yeah.
And, so we kind of get that. There's, like, a moment where they're like, whoa, hey, crazy. Whoa, this is where we were from. And we also get a confirmation, I don't know if it's in this episode or the next episode, that Omega is actually older than them. She was alive while that was happening to them.
Well, that was already established before, but that is specifically said in episode 16.
Mm-hmm.
And it said when Crosshair is there, so that he also learns, because he was under the assumption that she's just a kid. But yeah, because she is aged normally, she was cloned at the same time that Boba Fett was cloned.
Yeah. She's Omega and he was Alpha, which is, cool little, because his code name was Alpha.
Yes.
But so we have them there and they basically make their infiltration and go inside to rescue Hunter. And they basically are immediately led into a trap. I mean, they already knew it was a trap, but they were just like, we're going in anyways.
They knew it was a trap and they thought that they were taking the right path into the trap, but that's the path to the trap that Crosshair expected them to take.
Yeah, they thought they were thinking one step ahead, and instead he was thinking 2 steps ahead. So,
but then we get the reveal that Crosshair just wants to give them a chance to join the Empire, which again, like really revealing cool things about Crosshair that again, he just like he misses his brothers, like he wants them to join the Empire. He's sworn like fealty to the Empire, and it also like it's kind of hard to watch as an audience member because you're just like, they are actively working to get rid of you. They do not give a shit about you. And it's revealed in this episode that they did not give a shit about him.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, Crosshair's making a point. He's like, the little thing, the refrain that they always said, good soldiers follow orders. It's like, simple as this. A thing to think about is that they are soldiers. It doesn't matter whether you're serving the Republic or the Empire now. Like, you need to do what you are instructed to. You're part of an army that serves the greater good. And even if it's not the same thing anymore, or if they're doing this and that, like, you don't know. The thing about soldiers is you don't know what the grand plan is. And Crosshair says that. He says, you can't see the big picture. Like, the Empire, they might be doing these things that seem bad when you're a little person down on the ground, but they're trying to make the galaxy a better place. And if you understand your place as a soldier, you don't know what the major battle plan is, but you have to do what you're told or you mess up the plan.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think I see how it actually makes him such an interesting, depthful character that he's like, the best villains are villains that think that they're right, that they have a reason for
the best
doing their evil
villains
things.
think they're the hero.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, I'm just following the rule. You guys are the one that aren't following rules, and you're sabotaging what this new empire is trying to do. So it's great. It's just so good.
And so Crosshair basically takes out like the little platoon of soldiers that he had to spring the trap on them, to basically give him a chance to join the Empire. Like, he wants to basically really reason with them. But then Omega, thinking that they were still in the midst of a trap and were like probably in a bad situation, calls up a bunch of battle droids that are used basically for practice.
Who, if you notice, they have like the same design as like what end up being like the Dark Troopers later, like from the Mandalorian. They have very much the similar design of them. And this is a really cool callback to our first episode where they are put into a training mission. They're like, all right, show us what you can do. And it's them surrounded, uneven odds against, live fire training droids.
And they succeed. And despite Omega unleashing every robot, it seems they succeed again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, at some point they picked up AZ.
Yeah, it was in the laboratory. We almost forgot that. In the laboratory of Nala Se, that's where AZ was hiding out. And that's where he actually reveals to them, like, hey, they've unloaded, all the clone troopers are gone. Like, most of the facility is empty. And, the only troopers that are left, the ones that they've seen, are actually the TK troopers. They're not, clone troopers. And so we get, and that's when they're decommissioning this facility. Like, they're shutting all this down. They're taking everybody out.
Yeah. And
we get some interesting flash. Oh, no, this is actually in the next episode. But basically, yeah, they defeat all the droids. And one of Crosshair's, his elite troopers was kind of like, told by Admiral Rampart to like keep an eye on him, because even she said, like, I don't know what his intentions are with his old team. And she doesn't see him like actively betray and kill those other guys, but she sees that they're all dead and they're all fighting. And she says, hey, he's lost control of the situation, and starts making her way out. And Admiral Rampart says, all right, screw it. Like, all right, we need to wipe the city. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're in there. Take it down.
The clone failed.
Yeah, exactly. They failed. And so they start firing on the city, just, dusting it and just completely taking it out. Just massive blasts are ripping through the facility.
Leveling the Tapico City on Camino.
Yeah, I think it's Tapico.
Which look, it's always questionable when you're like talking about how Star Wars planets work. Is this like all of Camino? Because I see most of it's water. I
think in the next episode they say we've successfully taken out all the cities. Like, so I think like the Kaminoans, like, they built all their cities above the water because their planet flooded or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they start firing on the base, and the batch are trying to escape and get out. And like they have the way that they would come cut off entirely, and they move into the city. The entire city starts to collapse and sink into the ocean. And I don't know. This is where we start bleeding into the next episode. I can't exactly remember where one ends and the other one begins.
The episode, I believe, ends with him saying, open fire, and yeah, it is a weird bleed through.
Yeah, nonetheless, we're moving into the next episode, and
one more thing that happened in episode 15 was the Prime Minister of Camino first telling Nala Se to start gathering people up. We're going to leave before the Empire does something with us. And the Empire finds out about it, sees that Nala Se was behind it, brings it to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister says, yes, she will be punished. And then they say, we have no need for a politician. We do need a scientist. So they kill the Prime Minister, and Nala Se is captured and taken with the Empire.
Yeah.
Which we will see followed up in the next episode.
Yeah. And I think that's actually in episode 14, but it doesn't really matter. This, just as long as we have all the events happening here.
They're not in, I don't think there's anything on Camino in episode 14.
I do think it was in 14, but again, it's not really that, important.
Either way.
Yeah, either way. So we get leading into the final episode. The city is destroyed, essentially. It is sinking into the ocean, and Omega and Crosshair are separated from the batch as the wreckage and everything has sealed a blast door. And now the room that Omega and Crosshair are in is beginning to flood, while Crosshair is it's also AZ. AZ is in there with them, and Crosshair has a bunch of debris on top of him and was still unconscious as it began. So the batch tries to start breaking their way in. They're trying to cut their way with their vibro knives and
where he's trying to use it to like
pry.
Jimmy it open.
Yeah. So they're trying to get inside and save them, and Omega's like, it's filling up, and Crosshair's he's gonna drown, and yada yada. But eventually they do, as it fills up, get the debris off of Crosshair.
And we also see Omega's like chiefly responsible for getting Crosshair out. She like fires like a blast at the debris to try and because it's just not, it's too heavy for even all three of them together to get it off. So she has quick thinking and saves Crosshair there.
Yeah. Very, really cool. Like seeing Omega just be smart on her feet, useful, and save Crosshair. And so they end up getting him out from under the debris while the batch, as that compartment fills up, the batch pries it open and they get out. It was a weird thing. I don't know if maybe I wasn't paying attention well enough, but I remember them prying it open and water spraying out. And I was just like, how big is this opening that they made that they slip, that their entire bodies just slip right through?
But the gushing water. Yeah. I
was like, if you open that thing up enough, for their bodies to come through, unless they turn themselves sideways and
even then,
it would be blasting torrents of water.
100%. Yeah. That was, yeah.
But whatever, it works. They get him out. So they get out, and then they start moving through the facility, and I think they're moving inward through the facility to get to basically a part of the facility that's not compromised yet. And it ends up being, lo and behold, their old barracks.
Yes.
And they're like, what happened? And they make some kind of little banter and stuff oh, at least it doesn't smell anymore, and this and that. And they end up having an idea when they see out the window. Because
the entire building, in the midst of them getting to their old room, the whole thing turns sideways at some point, starts descending into the ocean, and then corrects itself when it lands on the secret tunnel.
Yeah, which I'm like, dude, the secret tunnel that is made of, even if it's super, ultra powerful, really great badass glass of some kind, the entire city lands on it.
But it's weight underwater.
Yeah, even so, I mean, there's some buoyancy there, but it's still most of a giant metal city. Well, I was kind of
it's mostly, a lot of it's filled with air. It's gonna be waterlogging and increasing in weight as more water fills into it, but we see how it doesn't descend that quickly, so it doesn't have that much density at this point that it's putting that much pressure on the tunnel. Look, yeah.
Yeah, there's enough. What you're saying there is valid enough that I can believe it, kinda.
But yeah, so but they see that they've landed on the secret tunnel.
A secret tunnel.
And they basically devise that they can weld a hole directly through the ship down to the tunnel and make their way into the tunnel and start walking through, which I thought was cool, but doesn't fully make sense, but we're just going with it.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just going with it. Cool. It's such a tight weld. They can do it into the glass tunnel. It's all fine. Whatever. Cool. It works. The city's not moving or shifting, and the tightness of the thing doesn't. Yeah, whatever. They get into the tunnel, and we're still, and like all this time, we're kind of having some back and forth, some banter between the batch, and more, seeing kind of like Crosshair's disposition with them. And there's a moment where they're walking through the tunnel, and some of them are saying things about Crosshair, and Tech sort of defends Crosshair for a moment. He is like, hey, you can't blame Crosshair for being, he uses two adjectives that I can't remember. They were like, interesting. But he says, like, you can't blame Crosshair for being like this. This is how Crosshair always was.
Yeah.
And Crosshair even says to him, he's like, oh, I didn't expect you to be the one defending me. He's like, I don't have to agree with you to understand you. And I was like, man, that is a great statement to say in general in any show, but it's just perfect.
It's the best thing that came out of Tech's mouth the entire show.
Yeah, potentially. Other than just, exposition and, ever so convenient, I can hack into anything when I need to and do whatever I have to at the time.
Yeah.
He was basically a Swiss Army knife that also had a mouth. And this was the best thing that the mouth did.
Mm-hmm. As they're going through the tunnel, there's a big water beast, Leviathan thing that shows up, and exciting for a couple minutes.
Which I have to say, that is nightmare fuel for sure. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But while definitely still being nightmare fuel, it's another point where I'm like, so this beast, because the city sank and the defenses for the tunnel aren't there, the beast is like, let me eat this tunnel. Now you can say, oh, but he can see that they're in there, can sense them in there. And I'm like, okay, it's going to fight and try to eat this tunnel.
Also,
get at them.
This thing theoretically doesn't like the light that is normally there, but it's attracted to them because they're walking through and they have light.
Yeah, I just didn't find it like it was cool, like tense moment. And, we can push them forward.
You could fully cut out this whole scene and just have it be a walk.
Yeah, honestly, I would have been fine with more exposition. There's actually no need to do like there's a monster underwater and they have to hurry up kind of thing.
Like it's essentially the last really like there's like one other like point of tension in the episode when we'll get to it, but like this episode doesn't have a ton of battles in it. It's more just like, how are they going to get out? It's a lot of tension building until they get to the surface, because, and we didn't really address this, like they've gone so deep underwater that even if they wanted to just try and get out and swim to the top, they could not reach it. Like they would run out of breath before they got back up to the surface.
Yeah. Which again, nightmare fuel.
Yeah. And even so, when they get to Nala Se's lab and they see that the next tunnel to where they are docked is destroyed and they can't take that path, they're once again at near the bottom of the ocean with no way up.
Yep. But they have a good idea, which is to use the capsules that they were like grown in to basically, create buoyancy and have them shoot up to the top. But they're like, well, how are we going to get past the debris? There's still debris falling off the water. It'll hit us and, this and that. And AZ, there's been some illusion already that he's running out of battery. And he's, and so we're getting like this little foreshadowing, little hint that like he doesn't quite have enough and he might not be able to make it or something. But he'll direct them because he can just, hover through the water, which again, no danger of a giant sea monster anymore. Sea monster's gone. It's not going to kill any of them, even if they're all in capsules.
Yeah.
And that becomes the plan, that they're going to get in the capsules and just, float all the way up to the top, and AZ's going to help guide them.
and he does a good job. Like he gets them all through. There's one point where some debris and gets on top of Omega's, and she starts plummeting, and he has to go down there to save her. And he's basically ends up having to use a like different methods of his like power. Like he has to cut the debris, so he's using his like welding thing. He has to use his boosters to like get stuff away. Like he's exerting the last of his power getting her up. And we see as they're getting close to the surface, Omega saying, AZ, you can do this. And we just see, I have protected you. My objective is fulfilled. And his like in his eyes goes out, and he starts to descend. And Omega tries to rescue him.
Yeah. I also want to point out that like, I guess maybe because the glass things are probably pretty heavy, but I just feel like they should have been shooting up like very quickly, right?
I mean, they did go up fairly quickly.
Like when AZ is pushing on her, like he starts to slowly float away from her capsule, and she's just like kind of watching him slowly float away. I'm like, he is a hunk of metal that, and she is supposedly like, via buoyancy and, like with the vacuum that she's in, she should be like, she's like fire away from him. Like he should be gone in the abyss before she can do anything. But whatever. Yeah. Physics, who cares?
The buoyancy of the situation aside, she jumps out of her pod like before she gets to the surface to start swimming down to get him, and then she gets to him, but yeah, like he is a hunk of metal, and like she had to go down pretty far from, she was near the surface, but like if she kept going she would have been fine, but at this point she was too far down to make it. And she's trying to get him up, and it doesn't look like she's gonna pull it off. And then we cut to the surface where they hear Omega say that she's going after AZ, and they're just like not sure what to do, and they're like starting to panic. And we see Crosshair pull out his rifle, and then he aims it down and shoots like a grappling hook thing that hits AZ and reels them up.
Now, important to note, he doesn't just point his gun down. He points it almost basically towards Hunter, and what looks like he's pointing it at Hunter, and he's going to shoot him.
Yeah.
And then fires it past him, grabs AZ and Omega. But then once they pull him up and we see what he was really doing, we look around and all the other batch have their guns trained on him.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be natural, right? If it looked like he was going to shoot Hunter, but it's kind of like,
even after all of this, they still don't trust him.
Yeah, they still don't, like, you were ready to turn your guns on him because you thought that he was going to kill Hunter, even though he could have killed Hunter any time before this. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely like, damn, guys, come on, man, y'all ain't, you just really ain't about your boy, like. So we have that. One thing while I'm thinking about it, I wanted to mention, and I actually started to say it earlier, but I was that back in episode 15 or 16, there's a point where they're like, where we just see flashes of different like compartments of Topoka City, and it's like ones that we saw in the prequel films and that we've seen, while in the
the vision of like the last time you see like the mess hall, for example. That's the one that stands out in my mind.
Yep, the mess hall. Yeah, and then we also see like the cloning chamber, like the huge, where all the clones, like tons of them, or the pods are. There's no clones in them anymore, but we see all these like images kind of flash by, and it's definitely like this feeling of like, wow, this place has just been emptied out. Like this place that was their home for so long, where they were born, is empty and then destroyed. So that was definitely like a kind of moment that is a little bit subtle, but definitely like has, it
has some weight to it.
Yeah. But we get back to here, and the batch, row their pods back to the platform that has their ship on it, and they get back to the platform, and they finally tell Hunter, or Hunter tells Crosshair, they say, Crosshair, come with us, join us. And he's like, no, I'm loyal to Empire. Like even though they basically blew it up, and
left him for dead.
Yeah, he's still like, nope, still loyal. Got to go back. In fact, you guys should join me. You should join me and come back with the Empire. And I don't remember exactly all the interaction at this point right there, but they just, don't agree with each other. But he does say, "You're always welcome with us, Crosshair."
Yeah. And the last interaction is Omega and Crosshair saying they're still your brothers, and like just like trying like that last emotional reach out to him before they leave. And they leave Crosshair alone there pretty much.
Yeah, I guess he'll just figure it out.
I mean, there's nothing on Camino and he has no communication device, but
it's cool. He'll figure it out, whatever. I mean, we don't actually know for sure he doesn't have a communication device. Like he could have one. Oh, hey guys, come pick me up. I know you're probably light years away and this planet's basically nothing now. Hopefully I don't get eaten by the giant fish.
The other cap off to the season that we get is Nala Se being embraced by some Empire scientist saying, "Oh, we really admire your work and your cloning prowess is going to be a real useful tool for the Empire." And I don't know if this is something that they're going to follow up with like in the next season. I can't tell if this is a tease for the next season or if it is what I think being just like the Easter egg of how Palpatine exists or how Snoke's exists.
Yeah, I think it's 100% well, not to say it isn't another thing for later, but it's 100% this is how we clone Palpatine later.
And this is how we create Snoke.
Yeah, exactly. Like they have the only like one last scientist that knows how to do cloning in the whole galaxy, which, frankly, if the technology existed before, like the idea that like there aren't other scientists that could have figured it out even on a smaller, less refined scale,
but
is whatever.
Maybe it's because she has that like extra touch. Like she did the Bad Batch and she did Omega. Like she's got like a refined like
yeah. And we know even though the Bad Batch just did not follow up on did not want to confirm my theory of Omega is force sensitive, even though I still think it's valid and could come up in the next season or something.
Honestly, I thought it was a really good idea of yours, but with them not delving into it by the end of this season and not even like giving any sort of tip offs this last episode, they could have like done something that was like conclusive enough of a hint to like, oh yeah, this is it. And we're going to follow up with this next season. Yeah. But like, it seems to just really enforce the fact that Omega is not special because she has the Force or something. Omega is special because she's just lived it longer and she's like she has more life experience technically, not like combat experience, but like she's lived her entire life with Nala Se, who is established to be a genius. Like, so even if she doesn't know the cloning process and all that stuff, like all of her interactions was with a person who is like presumably crazy smart.
Well, we know that they picked Jango Fett because he was, exceptional physical specimen and also like mentally, like he was,
exactly.
And Omega has all those same traits, and not to say like, females are the only ones that have this, but it's perhaps enhanced the natural maternal instinct or even empathy, that she just has greater empathy than most of the clones. And she was also raised to just not be a warrior. And that's why she ends up being the heart of the Bad Batch. They're sort of their moral guiding principle. We need to help them. We need to go back for him. We can't do this. We have to do this. While they're always like, oh, I got to stay on the mission. Oh, we got to, they end up they're guided in a more good moral direction because of Omega. And that's what makes her significant and special. And that she's still smart and capable, even for being young.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, but we finished these episodes. So let's delve into some topics. All right. So actually, here's the first thing I just want to address. These inhibitor chips, like what's the deal? Do they actually work or are they kind of bullshit?
Well,
are they difficult to get rid of, or can Crosshair have just independently removed his inhibitor chip without anybody in the Empire noticing?
that is it's that the whole I had my inhibitor chip removed. I like the idea that he was making these decisions on his own, but it's like, but when? And even Hunter says, he's like, when did you have it? Like it's important to know almost like, when is your decision making become just your own and you were deciding to do things because of who you are, and how difficult was it? Like, what did you have to do that?
So we know that he had the inhibitor chip in those first 2 episodes because the scientists literally see his inhibitor chip, observe that it's functioning better than the other ones, and increases its effectiveness. So in those first 2 episodes, he does have a fully active inhibitor chip, but at some point, completely unexplained, he gets rid of it when it seems like it's a difficult procedure. Like
it was a failable, like you can mess this up and like hurt them procedure when they had to get theirs removed.
Like, how does who helped him do this? He cannot have done that on his own.
Yeah, so it is. Just that idea and the lack of the fact that they didn't really give us anything there. They just said it,
and the fact that he has the chip in his brain makes him, and that it's turned up, means that he would have no desire to get rid of it.
Yeah, nor did he have any reason to know. So it's like we have to find that crosshair. Found out he has an inhibitor chip, and then goes and finds the place to do it. And now here's one thing.
The Camino's the place to do it,
right? But why would any Kaminoan remove an inhibitor chip?
And how does he get away from the Empire long enough to do that? Why would he do it? Who helps him do it? How does it get done? When it said that was a thing, like, I get it thematically. I appreciate him being able to make this decision on his own. But I was just like, that's stupid.
It's lazy writing, really. They were just like, this thing happened because we said so. We're not explaining it.
Here's another issue I have with the inhibitor chip. Gregor, again, there's no indication that he does not have an inhibitor chip. He was working with the Empire basically until he decided to leave one day, which I get, like, they're free to do, but at the same time, this inhibitor chip, like, compelled every clone to want to attack clones that fleed. So did they just turn on was Order 66 just temporary that was going through? Or
now here's what I think is that the inhibitor chip, I don't think it's necessarily all pervasive to a degree. I don't think it's just I don't think it was that they turned it on at a certain point. I think it's that the Order 66, now all the clones had a distinct loyalty to the Jedi. And so what I think its main purpose is to, your loyalty is to whoever gives this order, right? It's to force loyalty to whoever gives this order. I don't think it forces them to not, like, don't, run away from us and don't do this and that. Like, it forces them to follow orders from the person that it's, like, keyed to. And so I think that there's room to believe that, like, that Gregor, could, he's not being issued those orders anymore, like, from the people that it matters or something. But still, you're right. I agree with you. I think it's like kind of
the
like,
chip
what does it really do then?
The chip compelled both Crosshair and Wrecker to actively try and kill their brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
At separate points, we see the inhibitor chip specifically make them want to attack and subdue their brothers because they know that they did not follow orders. But Gregor's cool. Like, he probably still has the chip in his head because he's been with the Empire the entire time. But it's a weird thing. When Order 66 goes off, does it not affect, like, this is something that I didn't even think of until right now. Why didn't it affect that one clone trooper who left with his family?
Because he couldn't receive the order.
Fair.
Yeah, like, they had to all receive the order for it to go into effect. It's not like it was just a Wi-Fi signal ping. It was like,
they have to hear
Order 66, like, boom, like, the code word has been said. Anybody that hears it, and then it's like, and then it's just it's said to the main people, like the leaders, and the leaders go, you need to do this now, and it's really like lower clones are probably not as.
So maybe this guy's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I even thought too. I definitely was having that thought while you were saying this, is that, like, now we know that in Rebels, Rex says we all got our chips removed, right?
Well, Gregor, I have no problem with Gregor getting it removed going forward.
Yeah.
My issue is if he heard Order 66 and Order 66 compelled all these people to do this one way. And now it also makes me rethink the clone that rebelled on what's the lady with the ghost?
Lady with the ghost.
Rebels.
Hera.
Hera.
Yeah.
On her planet, there was the other clone trooper who rebelled.
Mhm.
And I appreciate the idea of the clone troopers rebelling because it's the reason that they get rid of them. But what does Order 66 do if not keeping them from rebelling?
Yeah. I don't know. See, it all brings up a great point. What exactly does the inhibitor chip really do? What exactly does it do? We know that it forced them to maybe do something they didn't want to do, but how far does this effectiveness go? Is it literally just Order 66, or is it like, you need to kill all the Jedi, and after that, like, you're basically fine? But we know it's not just that. Like,
yeah, because we know that they have to kill anyone who
doesn't follow orders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Or do whatever they're told, basically. But then we just, yeah, you're right. We just have clone troopers that don't do what they're told, and their inhibitor chips broke, or what? They weren't as effective. The only theory I can think that really reconciles it without having any more information is that maybe there are just, of the thousands of clones, right? There are just a couple that are like the Bad Batch, where their inhibitor chips just were not quite as effective. And they say the Bad Batch because they were.
And that, you know what? I kind of think that's fair.
It's fair, but it's still not like a good, like, I have to come to that conclusion, and it's still not really anything. Like, okay, I'll just assume there's where it's, again, I always say this is lazy writing. You're not like really tying up loose ends here. You're just making me go, well, I guess that's just how it works. Like, and I don't like that. It annoys me a little bit.
Yeah.
So that does just that like weird little conundrum kind of leaves like a slightly sour taste. But overall for the series, right?
Other than it being the big fun Easter egg extravaganza, like episode after episode of, remember this character? Here they are again. Like even episode 14 was just, hey, remember Gregor? Here he is.
Yeah, I have to say, so if I have to kind of give like here's how I feel about the series. I enjoyed the series. I like that they made it. They gave us a lot of interesting info and a lot of I loved seeing things that gave me more information on what happened after the Clone Wars and the things that led up to Rebels. So I like that. I don't like now. I enjoyed to some degree seeing those characters, but it was so much. It became almost just. It was too much, having almost nearly every episode. I don't know how many of them it was, but like from the very first episode, it's, oh, look, it's Kanan, like, okay, yeah. Cool. Apparently they saw Kanan, like, and then almost every, I don't know how many it is, but almost every episode is some character from the Clone Wars or from Rebels.
And really, like, early on, we just thought it was cool. We just thought it was kind of cool. I think the tipping point was the full 2-episode Rebels pilot, like backdoor, like intro to Rebels with Hera. That was just like, look, this is like, wasn't this show the Bad Batch? Like, we appreciate all the little cameos, like, but it can't be the entire show.
Yeah.
And it became the entire show. Like, other than like these last 2 episodes were the only ones that didn't feel like, ooh, cameo.
Yeah. And here's the thing is like, I went into the series being like, oh, cool. We're going to watch like the spinoff with this cool like group of special clone troopers doing their own stuff. And what it really became was the joke that we made maybe last episode or something, where this is Clone Wars season 8 and Rebel season 0. This is a vehicle for
connecting
what happened in between
threads
and giving us little tidbits about other, like, again, we used 2 whole episodes of the Bad Batch to give us more background on a character from Rebels.
Yes.
Or 2 of them, I guess, Chopper and again, and they tie back to Clone Wars because we got more on Cham Syndulla, her father and stuff. And, and it's not bad. It's just, I wanted a series that was more focused on them. I think this is like, the way that Star Wars and Disney wants to do their thing where they just use things and, oh, well, everybody's going to like this and they're going to shove it all in. And I'm like, man, you're actually taking away from you're taking away from the Bad Batch to give it to all these other things.
I don't blame them for wanting to like do like fan service and what have you, but this could have been its own thing and it just isn't. It's just another season of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, frankly, literally, if it would have made me feel a little better or even have a better
They could have just
expectation.
named it Clone Wars Season 8.
Yeah, no, they could, or they could have said Clone Wars: The Bad Batch, and like, because it isn't necessarily Season 8 of the Clone Wars, because now we're not following the same this and that. But if they had said Clone Wars: The Bad Batch, like it is a spinoff of Clone Wars featuring
That's
these
what
guys.
it feels like.
That's what it really feels like.
Yeah,
and that would have actually made my expectations for the series better. Like it would have primed me to think, okay, cool, this is a continuation of Clone Wars, but we're focused around these guys, and that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I think that's really just what it is. My expectations were sort of, in some ways, disappointed, but I still like that we got a lot of good stuff here. I think me and you talked about before that we wanted to see more from each of these characters, and
maybe next season.
Yeah, maybe next season. Maybe they'll really get to have their own season next season.
Honestly, I'm still optimistic for next season because I think this first season was just like they had to do a lot of what they did, or they felt compelled to do a lot of what they did. Whereas if this comes back for another season, which I would hope it does, they can maybe focus more on the Bad Batch. At the same time, I don't know what the focus of a follow-up season is. I don't know what their goals are going forward. I don't think, and that's kind of the problem. I don't know what their goals were this season.
Yeah, it was really just them. I mean, like, they were just moving from problem to problem. Like, it was like, okay, we had to escape Camino and like the Empire and all this stuff, and now we're just on the run, and now we're trying to get enough money to pay Sid, and now we need to go back and rescue Hunter and stuff. And it was a bunch of like short term, like we're just dealing with things that are happening, but they're not actually doing anything. Like, they're not like, we need to do this, and everything we're doing is pushing towards that goal. It's just, we're just doing things.
Yeah. At a fundamental level, other than their loyalty to the Jedi, which the Batch didn't really have, and the fact that they correctly recognized that the Empire was had wanted nothing to do with these clones, and they were killing innocents. That's the reason that they left the Empire early on. But there is something to be said about Crosshair's perspective on it kind of being valid from the perspective of someone who was raised to be a soldier.
Yeah, I mean, I basically would agree with you. Again, we touched on this already, but he's being a good soldier. Good soldiers follow orders. It's simple as that. And and to say like Crosshair basically doesn't care morally, it doesn't matter. He's a lawful, perhaps evil. Like, we know that he is willing to do terrible things, but in service to what the law is, and the law is the Empire. This is what we say. Hey, if you are considered a traitor to the Empire, you need to die, or you need to be taken out or taken into custody. Like, we cannot have any dissension. And there's an interesting thing there that, we always get the portrayal that the Empire is very bad, and we always see all the bad things that the Empire does. But I think, in some of the Star Wars books and things like that, like, I think there's, points where you see some of like the Empire not being completely terrible. Like, they do good-ish things, and they bring some unity to the galaxy in some ways. I actually could be totally wrong, but I know that some of my friends who talk about Star Wars say like there's places where the Empire doesn't seem all that bad. Yeah,
I mean, in a way, the Empire brings order to the galaxy. It's just a fascist order. It's Nazis. But if you're on the Nazi party, then it feels cool. You know?
If you have no problems with what's going on, if you can just follow the rules, everything's fine. That doesn't mean that it's okay.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, from the perspective of these people, they have left their life in the Empire, or their life in the Republic, working towards a goal that they all were raised to believe in, and they abandoned it so that they could be mercenaries for hire who occasionally do good things, but for the most part seem to just be mercenaries most of the time. And that seems to be their entire life. And it seems that they have no goals outside of that, other than when someone tells them, hey, go do this good thing. And then they feel like they've done a good thing.
Yeah. And it's a thing that like in movies and TV or really more specifically like in movies is when the story moves you and not like the hero or the main characters, like when they're not moving the story, when it's not like we have a goal and we're pushing everything forward. It's like when just things are happening around you and you're just going where like you're being pushed by the story.
The rise of the Empire is happening around the Bad Batch, and the Bad Batch just have to deal with it.
Yeah, they're just doing whatever they can.
But they have no purpose. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of how I felt seeing Rex in Rebels, where it's just Rex as part of like one of like the highest ranking officers in the Republic forces, just like he he works his way up, and he just becomes such this admirable character because the whole time he just believes in what he's fighting for. And when that goes away, we can see him like he's helping the fight and he's doing stuff right now. But by the time we see him in Rebels, he's kind of like I think he probably did a lot of good, and we'll probably see more of what he's doing in the confines of the Bad Batch. But the person he was when he had something to fight for versus the person he became when like he was just like kind of just a clone, and because at some point he's not actively in the rebellion, because when they find him, he's not actively in the rebellion.
Yeah, they're just toting around on a walker in the desert.
Yeah, and he's like, it feels disappointing to see him like that. But that's kind of what the trajectory of the Bad Batch are. Like, they're just going to be mercs for hire. They have no purpose now. And there's something to be said about Crosshair, who he misses his brothers, but you can tell he relishes in getting stuff done for the Empire and proving himself a good soldier. Like, he's the only conflict he has is that he misses his brothers.
Yeah, he lives a life of purpose. He knows what he's doing. I'm defending the Empire. Whatever the Empire needs, I'm going to be the one that puts down their enemies and serves them well. And yeah, the Bad Batch just have no purpose. It's just to like exist, keep existing, and
which is fine, but it doesn't make for a compelling narrative when your main characters have no goals.
Yeah.
And I hope next season they have a goal.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's like, we're going to get Crosshair back, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. Even like you look at like Star Wars, you look at Rebels, and you look at Clone Wars, and pretty much most of the episodes, there are episodes where you're just seeing things happen, right? They're just showing you events. But a lot of times you're watching Anakin or in Clone Wars, at least, you're watching Anakin or Obi-Wan or whoever the feature is of that episode that has a goal. They have to do a thing, and they're going to accomplish that over that episode or a couple of them.
They have a specific goal for the episode, but they have an overarching goal of wanting to be part of the Clone Wars or the Rebellion.
Yeah.
They are actively part of a bigger fight, and they're accomplishing their own specific goals each episode.
Yep.
When the Bad Batch completes their goals, it's just a lot of the times it's a goal for somebody else that they're doing to help someone, which is interesting. It's kind of like, it's almost like The Mandalorian in that sense. And I think I made this comparison early on that the show feels like The Mandalorian, except like The Mandalorian is a bounty hunter. That's his whole life. But then episode 1 is given a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And Grogu is that purpose. And it makes me, and it's why I am curious of what the next season of that show will be now that his purpose is no longer with him, presumably.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that now he has somewhat of a purpose. Like or at the end, there's an allusion to the purpose he can take up. He doesn't even have to, but that now that he holds the Darksaber, he is supposed to lead the retaking of Mandalore. Is kind of what we get the idea of.
Which honestly, that is pretty cool
Mm-hmm.
because it's a goal. We know what he wants. We know what he can do next season.
Yeah.
What did the Bad Batch do?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think that's what I like to see in the next one. I think that's what would make it better. I don't just want them to it's been nice to watch them do things and watch our characters, and it's been amusing, but like what would really make the story truly
a story
satisfying is to see them moving towards a goal all the way until in the end, in the finale, we get that. And you might say like, oh well, their goal was to like rescue Crosshair or something like, but it wasn't. That was all happenstance. They would have never went back there unless Hunter got taken.
We even explicitly covered the fact that they were actively not doing that.
Yeah,
they were doing anything but that.
Yeah. So that would make the next season a lot better if that was, hey, you wanted to do all the little cameos and just like show all these events and show us what's happening in the world with the Bad Batch as a vehicle to do that. In the next season, let's see what the Bad Batch want to do and see where they want to take it.
Look, I feel like I've been kind of criticizing this show a lot more than I expected. These last 3 episodes I liked. I liked the show as a whole. I enjoyed watching it. I'm just thinking from a universe perspective. If you look at what this show is, it feels like the only Star Wars property where they're not telling. You know what? I think it's similar in a way to Solo in that I feel like the goal of this was not to tell a story. It was to show things that they thought fans would like. Like the goal behind a Solo movie was not to show the Solo origin story. It was, we think people like Han Solo. Let's give them more Han Solo. And this was, we think people like the Clone Wars and Rebels, but there's no more story to tell with the Clone Wars in particular. Mm-hmm. And Rebels was probably not as successful as the Clone Wars ever was because it only got 4 seasons. But this just felt like the Clone Wars was really good for us, but we can't tell that story anymore because it's over. Let's see if we can make these characters like it, and it almost feels like the Bad Batch was put into the last season as an excuse to prolong the Clone Wars series because it probably was only gaining popularity going into that last season. I only watched it after that last season came out because of the tags and Easter eggs to the Mandalorian.
Yeah. I basically agree with almost everything you're saying, but I also would like to give my own caveat that, hey, if I've been critical of the series, I still enjoyed watching it. I just think it could have been better. Simple as that.
I'm talking about season 2 because I plan to watch season 2.
Yeah, precisely.
And I enjoyed this season. And again, I think the things that I really want to call out, things that I liked most about this season is I liked the Bad Batch. I liked Omega. I liked the animation was just gotten so much better. And I liked a lot of the cameos, but
I liked a few of the cameos. I liked most of the Bad Batch because again, I don't really, I like all of the Bad Batch in theory, but I don't really care about Echo or Tech at all.
Yeah. Techo, they're just there.
Yeah. They're just there. They're just serving we are tools. They literally are like tools. I mean, Echo is literally just a guy that has I can interface with computers, and Tech's I can just do whatever other technical things we need.
Really, really disappointing, those two. Yeah. I had some hope that they would maybe next season. Hey, you know what? Because this is just season 1, all of this can be remedied with maybe next season.
Hey, that's no excuse. Do better, Disney, because just because you can do better next season doesn't mean you shouldn't have done better now.
Yeah. But I think that's all I have to say on this.
Yeah, I agree. So until season 2
or until our next thing we're talking about, what if?
Yeah.
That's probably next.
What if? What if we talk about something else? But yeah, until next time, folks, this has been Robert.
And Ryan.
Have a good one.
Omega.